Oh.
There's complications of her getting out.
Oh no.
We have to fill out paperwork and all that kind
Oh.
of extremely complicated. But
Wow.
yeah, if she actually makes it here, I know.
Hopefully she will make it.
Hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, now I see you.
So you're
Ellen is you, right? Okay.
okay. So when and why did you decide to become a comedian?
I would say about 5 years ago, I started writing comedy. At that time, I was writing, but I've never done stand-up. I have tons of stand-up comedian friends. They encourage me, say, hey, you write comedy, why don't you write your own jokes, perform? About 2 years ago, I finally made my mind. Okay, I'm just gonna go up the stage and perform.
Okay. Tell us about your family.
I'm the okay, fine. Okay. I was the only child. Hold on, I said I am. Okay, I'm the only child of my family. I was raised by a very traditional Chinese family. My parents, I was raised by a single mother. She, she passed away when I was young, so I kind of get away from that. Most Asian kids has to go to school, be doctor, be lawyer. I know my mom would love me to become lawyer or accountant, but I started pursue my performing career. I kind of just a very few Asian child get away from being a lawyer, being an accountant.
So did you grow up here or you grew up in China?
I grew up in China and when I moved here, and I kind of got in the acting by doing commercials. And then, but I know I always loved performing arts, and I went to acting school and I went to improv school and then started to auditioning, got into acting. But I have a huge passion for comedy, and while I was at improv school, I just developed a huge passion with comedy.
So did you grow up in mainland China or Hong Kong? 'Cause those
Yeah,
are two different things.
yeah, mainland China.
So China is not really thought of as being a comedy haven. That culture is thought of as being pretty serious, pretty work ethic, very nose down driven culture. So what's it like coming up, having that comedy instinct, yet still having the culture that you come from?
I would say like I'm more Americanized. I've been in America for long, and I think lots of my concept and my comedy instinct are very. Of course, I'm still having my roots, my Chinese culture roots in me. I think just raised by two different culture between Chinese and American culture. A lot of times I feel I'm very conflict, but this conflict make me write my comedy jokes. Lots of my comedy jokes coming from the conflict between the Chinese and American culture. I feel like I was struggling between the two culture. A lot of times I feel like I'm Chinese, but sometimes I feel I'm more American. Um, so lots of my jokes are based on the conflict of those two culture.
How many generations of your family live here in the U.S.?
Um,
I never guessed that.
Second generation, yeah.
Um, how did your family react when you told them you wanted to become a comedian?
Like I mentioned, I'm the very few Asian kids that kind of get away from that because my mom passed away while I was a young age. I kind of get to do whatever I want to do. My dad, he's more, of course, he wants me to succeed. Just make good money, just like most Asian parents want you do. But my dad kind of maybe he felt guilty. He wasn't around while I was young. And after my mom passed away, he kind of just let me do whatever I want.
Um, what do you do for work besides doing stand-up?
I would say acting and writing. So being an actress is my full-time job right now. Of course, like, like most actor here in LA, you have other jobs. For the first couple years when I just got into acting, I still do other jobs, and I started my career by doing commercials, and I also modeling and doing tons of other jobs, like all the jobs here in LA, like most actors. So now I would say I'm lucky enough by doing acting like full time. Of course, there are always struggles. And then it's every day, you finish one job, next time you have to hustling for next job, just hustle never stops. But I just think the hustling is part of my spirit. I love hustling. I don't think I would be happy doing 9-to-5 job.
What are the positives and negatives of being a comedian?
I'm still new to this comedian game. I would say I'm pretty new comic compared to those comics have been doing this for 20, 30 years. So far, I still feel so exciting for me, and I enjoyed writing the jokes and then turned lots of stuff I confront in my real life and enjoyed writing them. Sometimes when I'm driving or when I was doing other stuff, I had new jokes. I'm like, I have to write it down. I just write it down my iPhone. So I would say just like, see the jokes turned into actual stand-up while I was performing. And then I'm like, wow, this is real.
How many hours do you work each day?
Oh my gosh, I'm workaholic. I work so many hours. I got up early every single day, and then of course I'm addicted to coffee. I have to start with my coffee, start a function. I just enjoy what I do, like sometimes 12 hours, sometimes 16 hours. Like I feel I'm like this kind of energetic bunnies. I have so much energy. I'm doing tons of stuff, writing and acting, and also trying to producing my own show as well. Just at least over 12 hours a day, but I do enjoy what I do. So for me, it's not like real work. Of course, there's always ups and downs.
As a hardworking citizen, have you ever felt like you were treated unfairly because of the color of your skin?
That is such a good question. I mean, being here in Los Angeles, I feel like we, as minorities, we have more rights, and we don't have so much discrimination compared to the other parts of states. The only thing I felt would be the casting. Like I said, I started going to auditioning by being an actress. I feel like a lot of times we don't get enough parts what we're supposed to get. A lot of times, being Asian Americans, the parts you got psychics, best friend. Like for girls, a lot of times it's very kind of stereotypical characters for Asians. So I do feel like in that perspective, we were treated unfairly because I want the other to see us. We can play any kinds of character. I can be girlfriend, I can be wife, I can be your co-worker, I can be just any character. But a lot of times Hollywood don't give you this kind of character to play. So, but I do see there are change. It's happening here in Hollywood now, but we have to push that change.
How do you feel about the Tony Hinchcliffe using racial slurs and making jokes about a fellow Asian comedian?
I watched that YouTube video because one of my comedian friends sent over to me. I would say I'm super surprised to see people still making this kind of slur towards like Chinese or Asians, because I think those kind of comments you would say back like in maybe 20 years ago, like my parents' generation, like the older generation, they will make this kind of comments towards like Chinese or Asians here in this country. But like for new generation like us, I think you see much more diversity in our country now. It's surprising in 2021 you are still seeing these kind of comments towards like Chinese or Asian American being made fun of those kind of phrase. But of course people can say, oh, there is a difference between people saying that in comedy or in the real life. But I don't think that's right.
Have you ever experienced a racist hate crime or violence?
Personally, I've never experienced any racism or violence towards me, but I think there could be something like subconsciously people were asking me the questions, like make me feel like it is a little bit discrimination towards me. Like they will say, where are you really from? This kind of comments, like they just want kind of like a little bit condescending. And I feel like in my generation we think those kind of questions should not be raised, but like oh, just there is no violence towards me. It's more like here mentally, like what people said to you or comment on you, like something like that. I just don't like people making these kind of comments.
How do you define the Stop Asian Hate movement?
Stop Asian Hate movement, for me, it is call to action, kind of like a wake-up call, because Asians, a lot of times in our country, we are labeled as model minorities. We don't speak up. We're different from like Latino or African American community. They speak up. Most Asians are very satisfied being model minority. Have a good job, buy a house, get a car, my life is great. We don't really speak up us as a community. I think we need more rights in arts, entertainment, and politics. But most Asians, we don't have that awareness because we want to just, okay, we have a good life here. Well, okay, we don't need more rights. But I think Stop Asian Hate bring us together, make us realize we need more right and more rights to move forward. To be labeled as model minority, it's not going to be a good thing forever. I think we want more rights in arts, entertainment, politics, and also to be seen as, I don't know, how most Asians are so quiet, right? They don't speak up, but with Stop Asian Hate, that make us have this awareness. Now it's time to speak up.
What do you think can be done to stop racism towards Asian Americans?
I think the things can be done. It would be definitely speak up more and unite together as community. And um, this question got me.
It's okay, we can move on to the next one. I got an answer out of April, I'm sure we others.
Mm. Oh, actually, I do have a question. No, I do have answers. Okay. I think we should start work together with all different kinds of community and different kinds of Asian. I think a lot of times Asian community was so divided. Like there are Chinese and Japanese, Korean, Filipino. We sort of divide ourselves. I think the only thing we can do right now as all Asians should all unite together, speak up more, and also like try to work on more community stuff instead of living your own bubbles. Do more community stuff and bring each kind of Asian all together and from different community, different fields, and just raise more awareness, talk to more people.
Okay. Do you think you can have an impact with your comedy?
Yes, I do think I could do that.
How do you define the American dream?
American dream. Yes, I think for all the immigrants coming to America, it's all about finding that American dream. For me, finding American dream is not just about um, have a white picket fence yard, have enough money. I think for me, it's all about you get to do what you have passion for. This is a free country. You get to have free speech, and if you work hard, I don't mean like if you work hard, you always will reach your dream. But I think there are less limitations. If you work hard and put your passion and heart in there, there are more opportunities for you to find your American dream. So for me, American dream is all about just get to do whatever you want to do to follow your dream and just be happy. I think in this country there are so many people came here to find their American dream here, and a lot of times people forgot. Oh, it's not just about the money, not just about power. I think of happiness and then that dream and fire inside you can be found in this country.
Tell me about your reactions when you saw the events over again.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
What did you feel or think when you saw what happened in Atlanta?
I was shocked when I heard about what happened in Atlanta shooting. Like I said, Los Angeles is very different from other parts of the United States. I mean, we do have racism here in the city, but we don't see that on day-to-day basis. It's such a diverse city, but Atlanta shooting kind of wake me up. I'm like, wow, I didn't know there's so much hatred towards Asian Americans. It was shocking to see what other people have those kind of concept in there about Asians, about Asian Americans in our country. So it's quite sad.
So what did you do afterwards? Tell me about the motivation and your first set of actions after.
I'm such a doer. When I found out about Atlanta shooting, I immediately talked to several friends and activists on Clubhouse. And they also have other Clubhouse people reach out to me. They said, hey, Kat, let's do a room, call for action. Let's do a fundraising. So the night right after Atlanta shooting, we started Clubhouse room. We started a campaign. And I actually did this almost, I think 3 huge campaign on Clubhouse. I feel I'm so heartfelt about how many people came over to support my rooms. We did a marathon room with like over 30 hours. And I have people from different community, white, Latino, African American, of course Asian American, they all came to my panel. And everyone united together. And we did such beautiful and a successful campaign. And that's the time I realized, wow, us Asian Americans, we can actually unite together. During the tragedy, this is a time we're not divided by our race, our color, or our language. We are all together. It's so touching. And I raised so much money for Asian American Advanced Justice. And that's the time I decided, I'm like, okay, I'm not just gonna be a model minority, just gonna be so consumed in my own bubble. Maybe I should do something as Asian Americans. We should speak up more and raise awareness to change how people think about Asian Americans. So this is the time I decided I want to do the documentary, and I want to, use my influence as a filmmaker, as actress, as a comedian, to impact people. It's not just about race. I think it's about culture. It's about humanity as well. I really hope this documentary will raise awareness about how people perceive Asian Americans. It's not just about comedians, about Asian American artists. Like I think we are undervalued in this country.
Do you think it's harder for a woman in comedy than a man? Do you experience things differently?
Yes, I think it is harder for women doing stand-up comedy than guys, because I think for men, they have more, they can say lots of things. For me, I only do clean jokes. It's just part of me. But I feel like, in order to get a laugh, people write lots of sex jokes and race jokes, which is the 2 kinds of topics I want to stay away from as a female comedians. I want to have my own voice, but I think the general audience are so used to about those kind of jokes about how men mention or talk about sex, talk about race, talk about, just like the man stuff. For female comedian, it's a little bit more difficult to get laugh from the people. You really have to be so intelligent to write your jokes. So I think in that terms, it's just like I have to educate, my dog is coughing. You have to educate the audience to get used to. It's kind of people are so used to those kind of jokes. They think, oh, that's funny. But when you, as a female comedian, come out to tell those kind of jokes, you spend hours and hours, right? It's hard to get a laugh from them because they're not used to it.
How would you measure success in comedy? For a lot of comedians, it's earning a living, which means going on the road, doing all of these, just over and over again, constantly traveling. How would you measure where you would say, I've achieved success in comedy?
For me, I haven't been on tour yet, maybe because I have flight anxiety. Getting out of the bubble of LA is actually a big thing for me. I'm so used to living in Los Angeles. I haven't been traveled to most parts of the United States. For me, I think the success of stand-up comedian would be if you made yourself a household name. People know what kind of style jokes or comedy you're doing, and then everybody will think, oh yeah, this person is this kind of stand-up comedian. They will immediately know what kind of comedian you are. And of course, like another way would be if you have your own comedy special shows on Netflix or Amazon. That's, for me, that is kind of the way to measure you have pretty successful stand-up comic career.
So, is there anything, or at what point would you say, you know what, I gave it a shot and I haven't been successful in LA? Like a lot of people have a backup plan. Some people don't. Some people just throw themselves in it and they're like, I'm going all in. At what point do you think people go, okay, you know what, I gave it a shot and it hasn't worked out the way that I wanted and I'm going to go to plan B? Or what's your thoughts on all of that?
That is such a good question. Backup plan. That is most Asian parents told us over and over when we get into this industry. What's your backup plan if you didn't succeed? Maybe my plan is I don't have backup plan. I have to be all in. That's why I hustle over 12 hours a day. I know if I don't succeed, I don't have backup plan, so I just have to work so hard. I really hope I won't disappoint my father. So.
What was it like telling your father what you decided to do? I mean, I would think it would be kind of similar to coming out and saying, hey Dad, I'm gay. Or what was it like to sit down and say, Dad, I have something to tell you?
To be honest with you, I haven't told my father I'm doing stand-up comedy yet. I don't think he would approve. I don't mean he would approve. I don't think he's ready to appreciate. I don't think my father is ready to appreciate the kind of jokes I'm talking about, because lots of jokes actually based on us being Asians and based on our culture. I kind of took different turn and write jokes around it. I think that would take him some time to sink in. So I think I will eventually tell him. I think maybe one day when I'm actually more successful as a comic, I will tell him, because right now if I tell him, he will think I'm doing something wrong.
So you will look at the camera and say, hey Dad,
hi Dad, I'm doing stand-up comedy, but don't watch my show till later on I'm successful.
Okay, so what about then when you told your dad you wanted to be an actress? Because you're obviously going against the cultural norm of doctor, lawyer, that high bar of success that's expected of Asian kids. So what was it like when you told your dad you would go into the arts in general?
My father was, I'm the only child of my father. I think I can get away from lots of stuff. Even he doesn't like me get in, entertainment industry, like acting and doing like modeling, those kind of stuff. I think till today, he's still not very happy with about that. He will keep asking me, what's your backup plan? He will always ask me, what's my backup plan? That's a conversation we will always have, I think. So when I told him I'm gonna do this, and then he's like, okay, you can give it a try. If it doesn't work out, you can still go to the business school or try to become, my dad think I can still become like real estate agent or do some other stuff.
So at what point do you do that?
Gosh, I think this is such a good question. When is the time I decided to stop? I don't know. I guess, like I said, I don't have backup plan. Just I keep doing it. I think there is part for any actors at any age. I just keep doing it. Yeah, I believed in myself, and I believed in what the industries bring to opportunity to actors these days. Last time I had this conversation with people talking about actors aged, right? There's supposed to be more parts for older actors. Maybe honestly, I'm very quite optimistic because I think I probably will get more parts when I'm older. Like I got it rejected from one part because they said I look like that character's sister. They're looking for that character's mother. So I think maybe I could get more parts booked when I get older.
Tell us about putting this event on.
You mean like a comedy charity show? Okay, so when I decide I'm doing this documentary, I have this premise written, and my filmmaker friend William, and he suggests why don't you do a comedy show? I was like, wow, that could be great because that's what I do. I perform at a comedy show, and then that would be a great way to open up my documentary. So I was looking for that kind of like a beginning of this documentary story. And then I think, wow, doing this comedy charity show could be this beginning story to this documentary. So I decided to do this comedy show as part of my documentary, also as part of my experience to producing my own comedy show. But I think by the end of the day, I still think I'm more lean towards being a filmmaker, actress, doing a documentary. But I think doing the comedy show will be a great way for me to explore myself as a comedian, to see how it's like to put on a show.
Has it been easy? Has it been hard? What's it been like?
I think it is getting harder than I had expected. When I just put on the show, I think, well, we just need to put out the flyers. People will come. Because a lot of times when I perform, I never have to worry about, the inviting people in, selling tickets. I just show up and do my set. But when you start producing your own show, you realize you have to contact the venues and book the comedians. At the same time, you have to sell tickets. That's a lots of stuff. You have to kind of just start thinking in your head, wow, life is so real. It's like a business for me.
Talk to me about Chasing Margaret Cho to get her to be the headline.
Okay, Chasing Margaret Cho is kind of like up and down experience. I first talked to my co-producer April. I said, April, can you contact Margaret? I think if we have her as headliner, we have a show. So she reached out to her, and Margaret is like, okay, I'm 50-50 in, depends on my schedule. So we started contact different venues, want to confirm the date, and I do keep that in mind. Is I do want to kind of compromise our schedule to fit in Margaret's schedule. But I know she has very busy schedule. At the same time, we also have to compromise our schedule to the venues who will provide their place for us to use that day as well. So we, it's interesting, like how it's like a kind of catch-22 game, right? So, you want to get a headliner at the same time. You also want to make sure you had the place ready to go, and then as we don't have budget to pay for the place as well, we don't have money to pay for the headliner. So everything has to line just like a perfect there. So we finally confirmed our venue on July 20th. So we went back to Margaret, and April was like, Margaret isn't available that day, but we already booked the venue, and I already booked other comedians. Most is a place is good to go, so the show must go on. We cannot have her. Hopefully next time we're doing the second show, we're gonna have her. I guess everything happens for a reason.
So, how much of your material, when you sit down to write material to do a show, how much is specifically oriented towards the Asian community versus something more universal? How much is aimed towards women versus men? How do you pick your material as far as that ethnic versus universal?
That is such a good question. I literally was thinking about this today, about writing my own material. A lot of my material I have right now is based on my own self-deprecated, destructive conflict I'm having, being an Asian American, being stuck in the two culture, being Chinese, being American. So I would say 80% of my jokes are based on that because I want to write something I know. But I do start to realize I needed to expand my jokes. I needed to write more universal jokes to just expand my knowledge of writing stand-up. Also writing more jokes between gender. I initially just wrote like 2 more jokes today. It's about that because I want to expand myself as a comedian, writing different kinds of jokes, not just stuck in one. Of course, it's good to start writing something I know first, and then I know I'm comfortable to talk about that. I can find the humor about that. For years and years, I find the humor. Being an Asian American, being stuck in this two culture, I found lots of humor behind it. But I know next step, I need to write more universal jokes.
So, when you're on stage and you've gotten a couple of laughs and then you reach a point where something you say isn't landing, how do you kind of reset and not let that get you? How do you power through when you get a setback like that? When something you really believe in doesn't hit, and then you have to kind of regroup and move forward. What's that like?
That is such a good question, William. That's a $1 million question. I think you can deliver the same jokes in 100 different ways. I wrote the jokes and also kind of go back to watch the way I delivered. And then next time I will go back to say the same jokes, but in different ways. I also rewrite, rephrase it, cut out the fat. Kind of just make sure I land that jokes, that punchline faster. So also kind of like refine my jokes. I think the more I do that same jokes, I will know in my head, I'm like, wow, this doesn't sound funny for me. Okay, I'm gonna go back, rewrite it, and when I'm at home, I will say it kind of loud. In my head, I'm listening to myself. I'm like, this doesn't sound funny. Okay, let me rewrite again, rephrase the jokes. And also like I start to paying attention to how I combine my body language and my facial expression in that jokes as well. I think it's not about how you say the joke. Sometimes it's about how you deliver the joke.
What about the pacing? Because timing is everything. So when you find, okay, I know this joke kills every single time, and I know that before I even really get to the punchline, the setup and then the expansion of the setup, I get a laugh there, punchline, another laugh. So how do you alter your pacing in order to allow for that window of the laugh?
Yes, pacing is everything. I performed same jokes 5 times, and I kind of realized the way I pacing the jokes get a different reaction from the people. I think a lot of times I'm a fast talker, and I intentionally have to slow down the way I talk. So I just kind of push myself, talk slower, kind of like a pace myself better to build up the jokes better instead of just saying it. I'm like saying it. So I start just pace myself better, just like build up a little bit. Also like try, how to say, cut out the fat, like unnecessary stuff. I don't have to say that. I just gonna cut it out and make sure I can land that punchline faster. And don't confuse people. Just make it just like simple.
Do you think these new online audio platforms like Clubhouse, Green Room, do you think these give comedians a chance to practice? Like it used to be, you had to go into a club, you had a room full of people, you're testing the new material, you know whether it works only by going back on stage. And then so it's this drawn out process of this time I get a little better, then a little better, now I'm finally there. Do you think that these platforms allow comedians to have more quicker response to the material they're coming up with?
Yes, 100%. I believe like Clubhouse and other audio-based app give comedian more platform to practice. Maybe because I'm from the like perspective of younger generation. I'm really into social media. I think these days people's attention span just so fast, and at the same time, I believe like when you use those kind of platform to practice your jokes, when you're in your comfort zones, you don't have that nerve in you. You can practice your jokes better, and same time like there is also different way people. Some people are very against doing the comedy over Zoom. I have like comedian friends that refuse to do Zoom comedy because they believe comedy is supposed to be live. But I'm like, from the perspective of younger generation, I think people, lots of younger generation people, they don't like go out anymore. Like I used to tell my dad, in your time you can go to bar, hit on the girl, ask them for drinks. Nowadays, you go to bar, hit on a girl, they're thinking you're a psychopath. It's just people's mentality has changed so much. Like, back in maybe like, your parents' generation, 80s, 90s, people tends to go out more, right? You can talk to people, just like randomly flirting with girls at the bar. But nowadays, if you go to a bar flirting with girls, they probably snap you right away, think you're a psycho. It's a very different mentality.
So art's job is to really reflect society, the times of society. It's really kind of a cultural mirror, if you will. Comedy seems to be not just that mirror, but kind of therapy. Can you relate to what I'm saying, or does that resonate with you? The comedy, very differently than most forms of art, really has this ability to, once you have someone's attention, to really alter their perception and to cause some healing through laughter.
Yes, as we said, comedy comes from tragedy. I think a lot of times when comedians write the jokes, it's based on their experience. Maybe when they were kids, were bullied, or maybe their struggles from their real life. And when you talk about those kind of jokes, it's like reflecting what you had experienced, the trauma, the struggles. And then when you deliver those jokes, you are connecting this to other humans as well. Because I think a lot of times people have very similar struggles. When you write those jokes, it's kind of a connection between you and the other humans as well. And it's very therapeutic for people. And this is like different art forms. Like people say, oh, comedy is about complaints, right? You complain. But like, that's a way people, nowadays, why people have to go see the therapist. You complain, right? That's a way to make yourself feel like you're healing yourself. You talk to therapists. It's kind of like when we go to see the therapist, most time therapist just sitting there, taking notes. You are talking. It's kind of like a comedy. You're on stage, you complain. And it's kind of like, of course, you turn those complaints into the funny jokes. And then when people are listening, they're like, wow, this kind of resonated with me. I'm not the only one who felt this way.
What's your better, dogs or cats?
Oh my gosh, my name is Kat, but I'm a dog person, 100%. I never had a cat in my whole life because I'm a cat already. So I guess cat and dogs, we cannot, I cannot have another cat. So cat and dogs are a perfect match.
But what's your dog's name?
My dog's name is Poochie. Hey.
And how long have you had Poochie?
8 years. I had him since he's a baby. So Poochie's kind of like a Gucci.
Is he going to make it into the act?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
If my backup plan is if one day I didn't make it in Hollywood, my dog is gonna make it. He's gonna be a star. He's gonna be a breadwinner. So that's my backup plan.
There you go. Okay. For now, there'll be more of these.